You all right? Doing all right? We'll see how it goes.
We'll see. All right.
Okay, we'll just get it. Is that what you did?
Yeah. All right. 3, 2, 1. We're here.
Hey, John.
Hey, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well today
We're back.
in these hot days of August
Mm.
here in beautiful downtown Tyler, Texas. We were just listening to a song by the Beatles called "Back in the USSR."
Good song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that give you a clue what we're going to talk about today?
Hmm.
Does that give you a clue? See, USSR, that invokes memories for me of, because I'm an older gentleman, of being in grade school, and then they would do a practice
Okay.
fallout shelter. We do like we do for hurricanes in the schools and for earthquakes in the schools or for emergencies in the schools. Well, back when I was in grade school, we did fallout shelter time
Why is that?
because everybody was so worried. You ones that are as old as I am, and even maybe a little bit younger, you wouldn't know about this, I don't think, because
I've heard stories.
He's heard stories. Youth, and fallout shelters, and everybody's so worried about because of the Cold War that there's going to be some kind of nuclear exchange and all life would be wiped out.
Okay.
So.
So where the bomb shelters and all that come in?
We had one in our home.
Okay.
Yep.
You did?
Yeah, a little one in the corner. Not that's really going to help if something happened, but I wonder how many of folks that are older out there just kind of go, yeah, I remember those days. Oh yeah. That was real life.
Tense times then. Huh?
Yeah. Now, in 1983, they made a movie with Matthew Broderick called War Games.
Okay.
You ever seen it?
I can't say I have.
And then in the movie, it's got where he plays this computer genius or this computer guy that hacks in and gets all this trouble. And so the game that the computer wants to play against him is thermonuclear war.
Okay.
And the computer is taken over, and now if the computer wins, it's going to shoot out rockets to all around the world. So I mean, this is a big deal. The Cold War is a big deal. So
what are we talking about today?
So I've, in my 43 years of doing a lot of traveling, and 13 of it being outside of the States, then what I want to say is just kind of get us pushed in the right direction here is I've traveled in a lot of socialist countries.
Okay.
Some that are called communists, some that are known as socialists, but it's all the same kind of block of thinking. So, what about just beginning with me sharing my first memory of stepping into a socialist country?
Share away.
Okay, so we're going to do like a couple of those,
okay.
And then some, and short ones, then maybe an observation, and maybe a comparison, and then a closing.
So which country first?
Well, a couple of friends and I were, maybe 3 of us or 4 of us, when I was a bit younger. We're traveling up to Europe and went through northern Greece from Istanbul, and went through northern Greece, and we're crossing over into Bulgaria, which was a part then, of course, of the Soviet bloc, Eastern Bloc, the Iron Curtain, if you will. And so we got to the border. It was a nighttime crossing. And so we're in a Volkswagen van. I go through. I think a couple of buddies go through. And then the friend that was last, his name was Dennis. he went through, but we'd all walked forward.
Okay.
And we're sitting in the car. So I was sitting there in the car, just kind of waiting. It's maybe midnight or something. And I glanced around, turned around the back window, and about 20 yards behind me was Dennis arguing with a border guard.
Okay.
And the border guard had his passport in his hand. And so he'd pull it out, and Dennis would go like this, and he'd go. And this was going on. I was like watching what's going on. Now, I'm saying this is normal.
Okay.
But this is my first memory of going into a communist country. And so he kind of was playing, and I could see, knowing Dennis, he was getting frustrated. So Dennis stood there for a minute, and the guy's like this, and Dennis went, boom, take the pebble from my hand type thing.
Sure.
Got it. So this guy bowed up, and I thought, oh no. So I jumped out and was running down there, and the guy was bowed up and kind of pushing him back. And I got almost down there, then another guard came out that was a higher ranking officer and yelled at the guy, and he stood down, and I said, come on, let's get out of here. So my first experience was, oh, these evil, terrible people, trying to just mess with us, with we Americans. So that was my very first experience in a socialist country.
Bulgaria.
Yes. Now that's unusual because border crossings are unique in their own special way. So I think the lesson from that is that was my first impression.
Okay.
During the Cold War, and of course I was always taught about the evils of socialism. And for good reason in a lot of sense, because of where I want to go with my second. Well, first let me ask you a question. You were reared in the Philippines. That's not a socialist country,
it's
is
not.
it?
I grew up in democracy.
Grew up in a democracy. Have you? I don't know. You've done some traveling. I know that. Have you ever been in a socialist country that you know of?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
No.
There's so much conversation right now.
Okay.
In the United States of America, especially with the troublesome times that we're living in, not only with dealing with COVID, but also with a lot of political upheaval and anger. So, that's going on, and a lot of the discussions are concerning the right and the left. Okay, or the right and the left. Get that right. I always had trouble with that. So anyway, and going on with that. We're gonna come back to that in a minute. That social dynamic that's going on right now.
So I do have a question. Why are some people attracted to socialism, in your opinion?
Because, in my opinion, because a lot of them are having a hard time. A lot of them have lived in a hard time that maybe wasn't even socialist. Just because something is not socialist does not mean that there aren't terrible, that people don't take advantage of the little people, of the weaker people, of the masses of humanity that are we call them just the daily grind people.
Okay.
And that maybe don't have a lot of possessions and don't make a lot of money. And so, to answer your question, false promises that there will be some kind of much better situation for them, utopia, and all these evil people in the world or in the country or in their particular area. They're the rich people. They're the people that have some money. They're the people, the investors, or the banks, and all of this. And it's obviously not working for you. So what we need is a government takeover.
Okay.
And I'm just putting it in the simplest terms. Government takeover, where the government runs everything, and they'll distribute to the masses and take care of them. So the government becomes, like their giant sugar daddy.
You used that analogy before in one of our previous conversation about the white van.
Oh.
The white government van.
Oh, I don't think it's been on camera, but we'll.
Oh, it wasn't.
We'll have to use that again sometime. Just hold that thought. All right.
We digress.
So we're going to look at and talk about that just a little bit more. And I know all this conversation's going on, and I want us to kind of address it maybe just in a current way, just in a simple current way. We haven't got time to really get into it in depth, but we do have time to mess with it. And I think we need to mess with it in an honest intellectual approach. And, as far as my opinion on this, well, my opinion isn't from social media. It isn't from sitting in some professor's classroom. And I'm not trying to make those sound evil or bad. That's not my purpose in saying that. I'm not getting it from a source that is totally beyond my experience. What I'm getting it from, reason I'm talking about this, is it comes from real life traveling.
It's a first-hand
knowledge.
Experiences with different people and
hundreds of conversations in 7 socialist countries over my 42 years of wandering. Some of those countries were during the Cold War. Some of those conversations, a lot of those conversations, were post-Cold War, which would be after 1991, say. So, let me take you
tell us some more.
Let me take you to another. Let me take you to another conversation I had, and these conversations are illustrative. They illustrate what one person, having a conversation with one person that lives in a society of socialism, in case we'll just call it socialism, that covers everything, represents millions and tens of millions of other people and how they feel. That's the reason I picked these particular conversations. They're not unusual. So I was in Yugoslavia back when Tito was still in control. Some of you older folks remember him from the Cold War. And I was in the city square of Zagreb, Yugoslavia, socialist country. And I got into a conversation with a woman there. I think she looked around 40. And I don't remember how we got in the conversation. I didn't know her or how the conversation started, but there was a conversation. And it was...
So, excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Paint a little picture for me. What is it? It's in the city?
Yes.
Paint
City
your little
square.
background. Yeah.
City square, all these European countries, and even in the old U.S. of A., you had your city square. Tyler has a city square and all these places. So in the larger cities, it's a large area. And statues, and shops and restaurants and fountains, and people will like to walk through there, no cars. And so it's just like a walking area, and just the people, move around and maybe go from a spokeswheel situation and traveling to different places. So anyway, does that kind of help?
Yeah, it does. Just just kind of for the folks that I don't think I've ever traveled to a socialist country, and my perception of one is really just a normal. Yeah,
it's just a normal center of town. Center of town. So this woman got a conversation. So she's asking me where I'm from, and her English is, maybe she wanted to, a lot of times people want to practice their English when you get in conversations. And that could have been the reason. So she found out I was an American, and she was like, oh. And you can see the wheels turning. So if you can watch my expressions, the wheels are turning in her head, and she's looking at me, and she goes, oh, you an American? I said, yes. And she says, oh, wow. Oh, watch. And she goes, can I ask you a question? And I said, well, sure. And she's like this.
Just looking around?
She's looking around much more subtly than I did, for about 15 seconds. And she's looking around because she's afraid of somebody that might hear a conversation between she and a Westerner, specifically an American, maybe.
You get a lot of trouble, huh?
Well, socialist country. Government, big government, is a controlling entity. So that reveals so much about the mentality of the common people living in a socialist country, is this awareness of they could get in trouble from a mere communication, a mere conversation. I am not exaggerating. See, I know what I'm talking about. So she looked around. I've had that kind of conversation before with others. Again, this is illustrative of that. So she says, okay, I want to go to America. I would love to go to America and to work and to be free. And she was just letting this out. And I'm like, yes. And I said, yeah, I understand. She goes, oh. And that was the conversation with a few other things. But she had to get that out. Interesting, to say the least. So.
But that was such a release for her. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Good observation. Anytime you think about stuff like this, whether it's a conversation there or a conversation in Vietnam or a conversation in Cuba, whether it's a conversation in East Germany, I would love, and I plan to tell another story, not at this point, but about being in East Germany and into Berlin and then crossing over. I was able to cross over from West Berlin into East Berlin.
Oh, that'd be
and
great.
I'm going to show you a dichotomy. I'll show you. It's kind of mind-blowing. And just walking the streets of East Berlin. Anyway, wow, that takes me back. Okay.
So back to
this.
Yeah.
Back to this. I'm following a little set of notes here that I'm thinking about because I'll get off track because there's so many thoughts that come to my head, and I don't like to follow like A, B, C, D, E, and follow an outline like it's rehearsed. So I have just some thoughts out and about. Mom would be proud. Okay. Something about socialism. Let me know when we need to start thinking about 22 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that, because I don't want to just go on and I'll lose track of time.
Sure, yeah.
So, in socialism, your identity is found where? Is it found, do you think, in a group identity or in an individual identity? Group identity versus individual identity. What do you think in a socialism, communist, socialist country, where is identity found?
As a group.
As a group. And I'm saying, okay, well, was that bad? Well, I've been in a lot of other countries where it's just group identity too. That's cultural, and let's save that for another conversation. So, group identity versus individual identity. So, if your identity is found in the group, then when you want to do something that the group doesn't think is relevant or frowns upon, or it says, you've got to be careful not to go there, much like a fundamentalist in a fundamentalist religion, same way, same idea, is that if you think outside of the group, you can be punished in various ways.
Be banned from society.
Okay.
Black bag.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you're right.
Go ahead.
So I was thinking about that. Secondly, your social identity. In other words, stay with this for a second. Your social identity. Are you able, in a socialist country, communist country, to move up and down the ladder socially? Like you can here in the West, maybe in a capitalistic society? The answer is no. You know what it reminded me of? About keeping your place? It reminded me of, you didn't even ask. Because I didn't. He has no warning he knew the subject, but he doesn't have a warning. John's a hard worker. He does other things besides this. And so, you're familiar with the Indian. This is my own analogy. Maybe it works for you. Maybe it doesn't. I'm going to throw it out at you.
Tell us.
Okay. You know the Indian or the Hindu.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask.
The Buddhist.
Okay.
caste system.
I'm
You know,
familiar.
at the top is the
Royalty and-
Brahmins and the royalty and the academics. At the bottom, it comes down to the workers, and the very bottom is the untouchables. You got like five castes.
Okay.
And what happens in that, whatever caste you're born into, are you allowed to move out of that caste?
No.
No, sir. And if you do, it's considered very evil and bad, and you are a troublemaker, and you can get in trouble for it. And how do they keep the people in the caste where they're born into? If you're born poor, you stay in that, because if you stay in that, then your karma will be good, and when you die, if you stayed in your proper place and haven't rebelled, then when you die, that makes good karma. And what will happen when you are what? Cycled back in. Reincarnation. You will be born very
life.
Possibly into
The next step.
in a higher situation, a better situation. So that people go, oh, okay, well then I'll just do what I'm told and stay in the place that I'm born. That's the deal.
If you believe in reincarnation.
If you believe in that. Now there's billions that
Millions,
that believe
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the whole cultural aspect of that and the religious aspect of that. So I was thinking about that caste system, and I thought, you know that's a little bit similar to being born into a system of socialism or communism, because moving up and down is not encouraged, no matter how creative you are, no matter how much energy you have, no matter how smart you are in a certain sense. You can be used by the state, but for the common people, it says, here's what you have, here's the food, here's the housing, here's what you have. You stay where you are. And you're not encouraged to think outside of that box so much, because it all revolves around the controlling element of the government, the big government. So I was thinking about that and go, that's kind of interesting. The analogy is not quite finished in my head, but I'm working on it. So you got a working analogy there that's something to think about, is that in the United States of America, how does it work? What did the founding fathers say about the most important element that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Federalist Papers and all that? Who's the most important person in all of that?
The individual.
The individual, exactly.
Freedom.
Everything works around the individual. And I know this is basic stuff for a lot of people, but you know what? For the young people, for a lot of the people that are very savvy on social media, I'm not trying to be negative here, we're on social media right now. And it's for a good purpose, we believe. And there are others on social media that also think that maybe some anarchy and sometimes demonstrations are a good thing. Now, yes, we are afforded the right in the First Amendment for protesting and to demonstrate what we believe peaceably is what it talks about. So, we're thinking about that. What can we do? I mean, what is it that you as an individual today, what's your responsibility to do? What is it that we're required to do? The answer to that, is that an answer that a group makes a decision on? Or you or me or you as an individual makes a decision on? It's a rhetorical question. Founding Fathers, United States of America, our Constitution is diametrically opposed to the spirit that is behind what we call socialism.
Well, it's about freedom.
It's about personal freedom.
Personal freedom. Yeah.
Yes. How do we value that? Do we ask? How about asking people that have lived in a society of socialism? How about the protesters in Hong Kong?
Hasn't worked. And
Hong Kong protesters? What about them? What about all the people that came here from socialist countries? You know what 99.9% of them say?
No, tell me.
They say, I would never go back to those countries. They are thrilled to be here in the freedom that America provides.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I don't get it because it's hard for me to make the leap, but then I see there's whole generations coming up that have been told differently and have been told to think not that they're valuable as a person, but it's in their belonging to a group think that makes them valuable. So if they're to step outside of groupthink, a lot of the folks that are doing this, they feel lost. They feel, abandoned. They feel like they're on a ship on a sea that has no rudder. And so I feel for them, and then I know you do too. Mm-hmm. I know that you do too. And if how to bring about some clear wisdom in this is what we're all about. I'm just talking today about this because there's so much to it.
I just want to say, as an immigrant to this country and and becoming a naturalized citizen, I do appreciate what this country has offered me and has afforded me the opportunity for such freedom. Living our best life.
Living our best life. How about, I guess, is it time to close this one up, you think?
We have a few more minutes. Yes, getting close. We have a few more minutes.
I want to take it to a little something here. And I'm going to close it with maybe how the Creator sees us.
Okay.
And our Maker, our Creator, God, He made individuals. He made us as an individual. He didn't make us as a group. Again, there's purpose in group and all that. But that's not what we're discussing. My worth is that I'm, and you, and you, and you, and you, and that person demonstrating, and no matter who you are, your worth is found in that you are created in God's image.
Yep.
With absolute freedom to choose. Being created in God's image means you have absolute freedom to choose. That's why we can choose wrong. That's why we can choose hurtful things. That's why we can choose good things. That's why we can choose those things. We have freedom of choice, which we all know.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom of choice is just a higher form of maturing and exercising that in a good way than being part of a group think that says you think like this and you're accepted. No, you are accepted. Here's the thought. It talks about how God asks questions to people He loves. He says, I'm talking about the last day. In that sense, however you want to look at that, is he talked to him about when someone was thirsty. Did you give them a cup of cold water? When someone's hungry, did you give them some clothes? Food, did you give them some food? He asks that from an individual standpoint, from an individual way. It's the individual. So the founding fathers were reflecting that idea that we are personally responsible.
Yes.
In socialist countries, they crush a creative spirit. They crush individual thinking. That's a no-no. Yeah. It's an anathema. So, why don't see? I'm trying to think about what's
John,
a good way
it's really. Thank you for sharing your stories and your perspective and your travels, and it really is like for myself, hearing your stories. It's I've enjoyed it.
I wanted to, thank you. I'm just
really, and like you said, with God giving us free will, and we are of God's image.
Yes.
We're, to me, it's we're you, me, you are perfect and complete just the way you are already.
Yeah.
It's
Always moving forward.
Mhm.
Always loved to where we are, and a future podcast I think would be good as a subject. I'm just throwing out at you as we close is no matter if you're religious or not, there is no difference in how much you're embraced. And I want to talk about that sometime. Don't you think it'd be a good conversation?
Amen to that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, you guys, John,
Yes.
why don't you just say what you got to say, and
We've said what we could. Yeah, what we have. So, thank you all for joining us again.
Adios. God bless.